back, you have been living as a fraction of what you actually are. Not because you lack capability, not because life has not given you enough opportunities to discover your full nature, because the identity you were handed, the one assembled from other people's perceptions, cultural conditioning, early wounds, and the accumulated evidence of a world that consistently underestimated you, was never the truth. It was a story. Specific, detailed, internally consistent, and almost completely wrong about the most essential thing. What you actually are is not what that story described. And somewhere beneath the noise of daily existence, beneath the self-doubt and the chronic comparison, and the specific, exhausting labor of someone who has been trying to prove their worth to a world that set the bar in the wrong place, something in you has always known this, has always carried the faint, persistent, sometimes inconvenient sense that the version of yourself you have been performing does not account for the full territory, that there is something in you that the ordinary categories cannot contain, that the life you have been living, however genuine its moments, has been operating below the level, back, of what you are actually capable of. That sensing is not arrogance. It is not the grandiose self-assessment of someone who has not done enough honest self-examination to see their own limitations clearly. It is the specific, accurate perception of a soul that can feel the gap between what it is and what it has been permitted to become. The gap is real, and the thing on the other side of it, the true identity that the gap points toward, is not what you think. It is not a more successful version of the current self, not a healed, upgraded, spiritually polished variation of who you already are. It is something that was present from the beginning, before the wounds, before the conditioning, before every voice that told you to be smaller, quieter, less certain of the specific and extraordinary nature of what you carry. You carry a spiritual weapon, and you have been treating it like a liability your entire life. What follows is the honest account of what that weapon actually is, and what becomes possible when you finally stop apologizing for it. The identity you have been living from was not chosen. It was constructed by the environments that formed you, by the people who were present, back, essent during the years when identity was being assembled from the raw material of experience, by the specific, often unconscious messages delivered through tone and attention and presence and absence about what you were worth, and what the world would do with you. This is not an accusation against the people who shaped you. Most of them were doing the best available to them with the interior resources they possessed. The wound was not always intentional, but the wound was real. And the wound produced something specific in the architecture of your self-concept, a fundamental misalignment between the story you have been telling about yourself and the truth of what you actually are. A persistent, low-level, sometimes devastating disconnection between the identity you inhabit and the soul that has been living inside it, pressing against the walls of the constructed self, like something too large for the container it has been placed in. Here is what the constructed identity told you: that your sensitivity was weakness, that your depth was impractical, that your inability to be satisfied with surface-level existence was a form of difficulty rather than a form of discernment. Back. That the specific, unusual quality of your perception, your capacity to see beneath surfaces, to feel what is actually happening beneath what is being presented, to know things with a certainty that precedes logical justification, was something to be managed, moderated, and if possible, concealed. And here is what those messages were actually communicating beneath their surface content. They were communicating the discomfort of people who were not equipped to meet what you carried, the specific, unconscious resistance of environments that were organized around a certain level of depth and that found your natural operating level too revealing, too demanding, too confronting to accommodate comfortably. The identity they handed you was not a description of you. It was a prescription for making you easier to be around, smaller, more manageable, less likely to ask the questions or hold the presence that made certain people uncomfortable simply by existing at full intensity in the same space. You accepted it, not because you were naive, because you were young and dependent, and the alternative holding the full truth of what you are against the sustained pressure of the environment. Back, so that needed you to be less was not yet available to you. But it is available now. And the first step toward it is understanding what was actually taken when the identity was handed to you. Not your worth, not your capacity, your permission to inhabit both. Here is the truth about what you carry that the constructed identity was most specifically designed to suppress. Your sensitivity is not a wound. It is a weapon. The most sophisticated, most precisely calibrated, most genuinely powerful instrument available to a human being in the navigation of genuine reality. Not a weapon in the aggressive sense. In the precise, effective, nothing is hidden from it sense of an instrument that cuts through to truth with a completeness that no amount of intellectual analysis can match. That reads the energy of a room before a word has been spoken. That knows the emotional reality of a person beneath the presentation they have constructed for public consumption. That perceives the gap between what is being said and what is actually true with an accuracy that feels, to the people whose inconsistencies it detects, uncomfortably like being seen through. This is the weapon, the specific extraordinaire, nary, genuinely rare capacity for direct perception of what is actually real, not filtered through wishful thinking or social conditioning or the comfortable agreement to maintain fictions that most human environments require, but directly, accurately, sometimes uncomfortably perceived. And here is the aspect of this weapon that most people who carry it have never fully understood. Its power is not located in the perception itself. The perception is the instrument. The power is located in what you do with what you perceive, in the specific quality of genuine presence that you carry into every space you enter, that makes authentic connection possible in a world that is starving for it, that holds space for the truest version of the people around you, rather than requiring them to remain in the managed, curated, self-protective presentation that most relationships demand. Your sensitivity allows you to meet people where they actually are, not where they are performing themselves to be, not at the comfortable surface that most human interaction maintains. In the real place, the interior, the wound, the genuine self that is rarely permitted full expression in the ordinary social world. LD. That capacity is extraordinarily rare, and it is extraordinarily needed, not as a service you provide, as the natural expression of what you genuinely are. Here is the second dimension of the spiritual weapon that the constructed identity was suppressing. Your capacity to hold truth without flinching. The specific, hard-won, entirely personal ability to sit with genuine complexity, with the parts of human experience that most people find too painful, too dark, too confronting, to remain present with without needing to resolve it into something more manageable before you are willing to acknowledge it. Most people cannot do this. Not because they are less capable in some general sense, because their nervous systems have not been through what yours has been through, have not been required to develop the specific tolerance for sitting with difficult truth that your particular life with its particular tests and its particular depths and its particular demands produced in you. You were forged in difficulty that was actually building something extraordinary. The weapon was being made the entire time you thought you were simply surviving. Here is what becomes possible specifically, back, lie, practically, in the lived texture of your daily existence when you stop living from the constructed identity and begin inhabiting the true one. The first change is in how you move through difficulty. The constructed identity experienced difficulty as evidence of its own inadequacy. Every challenge was filtered through the wound, through the specific self-doubt of someone who had been told, directly and indirectly, that their capacity was limited. Every setback landed as confirmation of the story. Every obstacle added weight to the narrative of someone who was not quite enough. The true identity experiences difficulty differently, not without feeling it fully, with the complete unfiltered depth of perception that is your actual nature, but from a different foundation. From the specific, grounded certainty of someone who knows what they are made of, who has been tested, who has survived, who carries evidence of a capacity that is not available to people who have been protected from the depths that forged it. The difficulty becomes information. The challenge becomes the specific context in which the weapon is most precisely useful. The darkness becomes the territory. Back, Ori, where your capacity for genuine presence, for sitting with what is real without flinching, is most irreplaceable. The second change is in your relationships. The constructed identity attracted a specific kind of dynamic. The dynamic of someone whose suppressed power made them accessible in ways that more grounded people are not, whose sensitivity without sovereignty drew people who needed the sensitivity without being equipped to honor it, who found in the wound-based version of your openness a kind of availability that served their needs without requiring them to meet yours. The true identity draws something categorically different. It draws people who are capable of genuine meeting, who can receive the full version of what you carry without being threatened by its completeness, who bring their own depth rather than depending on yours, who encounter the weapon you carry and respond not with the discomfort of someone who finds it revealing, but with the recognition of someone who has been looking for it. The third change, and this is the one that is most difficult to describe and most unmistakable when experienced, is in your relationship with your own existence. The constellation. Back, ructed identity lived in a continuous, low-level state of apology for itself. The apologizing was not always verbal. It was the specific, habituated orientation of someone who had internalized the message that their natural way of being required justification, that their depth needed to be earned, that their presence at full intensity was more than the ordinary world was entitled to receive. The true identity inhabits itself without apology. Not with arrogance. The absence of apology is not the presence of arrogance. It is simply the specific, quiet, entirely grounded orientation of someone who has stopped asking permission to be fully what they are. That orientation changes everything it touches, because genuine presence, unheld, unapologetic, fully expressed, is the rarest thing in the human world, and the rarest things carry the most weight. Here is where the philosophical becomes personal, where the understanding stops being something you are processing and becomes something your body is receiving in the specific, physical, cellular way. The genuine recognition arrives when something true finally reaches you at the level below language. You have been living below your own back level, not because you lacked the capability to live at your actual level, because every environment that shaped you needed you to operate below it for their own comfort, and you accommodated that need with the specific, generous, sometimes self-destructive accommodation of someone who had not yet understood that the level they were being asked to lower themselves to was never the honest measure of their actual nature. That accommodation ends now, not with a dramatic announcement, with a specific interior, entirely private decision to stop measuring yourself by the metrics of environments that were never calibrated to receive what you actually carry. Here is your challenge, the specific, behavioral, daily life practice that consolidates the identity shift rather than leaving it as an insight that fades back into the constructed self within 48 hours. For the next 7 days, 7 specific days, beginning today, every time you catch yourself shrinking, you pause. Every time the automatic impulse fires to moderate your depth, soften your perception, qualify your knowing, apologize for the specific quality of your presence, you pause. And you ask yourself one question, back, and whose comfort am I managing right now? And is managing it worth the cost of not being fully here? Not every answer will point toward full expression. There are genuine contexts where restraint is wisdom rather than suppression. But you will discover, in the honest examination of this question, across 7 days, how many of the shrinking impulses are not wisdom. How many are the habituated performance of a constructed identity that was never the truth? How many are the specifically trained response of someone who learned too early and too thoroughly that their natural level was too much for the rooms they were in? The rooms have changed, and more importantly, you have changed. The tests you have survived, the depths you have moved through, the specific forging that your particular life has performed on your particular soul, all of it has produced something that the original constructed identity was never equipped to describe. You are not the wound. You are never only the wound. You are the instrument that was shaped in the wound's forge, the perception that was sharpened by everything that tried to dull it, the presence that was deepened by everything that tried to diminish back it, the specific, extraordinary, genuinely irreplaceable configuration of consciousness that arrives when a soul has been through enough genuine depth that it no longer needs to borrow its grounding from the external world. The spiritual weapon you carry is not something you developed. It is something you were that the world spent years trying to convince you was something else. A liability, a wound, an excess of sensitivity that needed management. It was never any of those things. It was always this. The capacity to be genuinely, fully, completely present with what is real in yourself, in others, in the world, without flinching, without managing, without the protective distance that most people maintain between themselves and direct experience. That presence is the weapon, not because it harms, because it heals, because it creates simply by existing in a room the specific condition that genuine healing requires. The experience of being truly met by something that sees clearly and remains anyway. You are that something. You have always been that something. The only thing that was ever in question was whether you would finally stop apologizing for it. That question has been answered. Your true identity is not waiting to be built or earned or discovered. It has been present this entire time beneath every constructed layer, beneath every accommodation, beneath every moment. You made yourself smaller than the truth of what you are. It is here, right now, in the body reading these words, in the soul that recognized itself in what was just described, in the quiet, unshakable, finally undeniable knowing that you were never what they told you you were. You were always this. Claim it, without apology, without qualification. without one more moment of living below the level of your own truth. The weapon has been yours the entire time. Now use it.